Amy, thanks for coming in to 100units.com. This is Amy Calandrino. She's a rock star over at Beyond Commercial. She's going to give us the insights on commercial real estate here in the Central Florida market. To get started right away, Amy, what insights can you share for people going into 2022?
I would say the number one thing to keep your eye on, if you're not already doing it, is to be taking actions to combat inflation. It's here to stay. It's not going away, and you need to be doing things to mitigate that impact on your investments or your business.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree with you. I think you are right on as far as inflation. What are you excited about right now outside of your business? You're really pumped.
What am I outside of my business most pumped about? Well, I have 2 babies, and so my oldest is Giovanni. He is just barely 2. And my daughter Giulietta, spelled just like the Alfa Romeo Giulietta, so Giulietta. Yeah, so she is just about to be 9 months, and so I have 2 little babies, and so they really keep me busy when I'm not at work. So yeah,
that will be a massive handful. For everyone who doesn't know, this is 100units.com, and sorry, I'm behind the camera today. Double safety first. All right. Give us a quick background on what you were doing before you started Beyond Commercial.
So before I got started my brokerage, Beyond Commercial, I worked in the legal field for a number of years as a business and real estate law paralegal. And a lot of people, either they do the transactions or they do litigation. I actually did a little bit of both, so I don't see things in black and white. I tend to see them in gray because I can see how contracts can play out in court and see how it all gets very much put together. So
exciting legal field, wow. And then what got you to switch over into the brokerage business?
So in my role as a paralegal, I got to work with a lot of different businesses, and I really have a passion for helping businesses to grow. And so I wanted to do something where I could make a big impact for businesses, and where I found the greatest need was there wasn't a lot of brokerages set up to just focus on small to medium-sized businesses. It tends to be more so going for the big owners or the large towers, and there's not a lot of consultative brokerages like really set people up for success. And so I knew that the law firm I was with is a small business as well, and I just really saw that need and decided to create something to really help business owners to grow and then eventually build wealth for their families.
Yeah, excellent. What did you see in the brokerage business, or how are you using it now as your current role in Beyond Commercial?
So with my current role at Beyond Commercial, first I grew from just me and I had this whole vision plan of, eventually being me and an assistant and another agent. And then, I had this plan, and I started to build the 20-lane, highway. Today, I'm really more of the owner and the coach, and really helping all of the folks that are within the team to fulfill their role. I think we have more than a dozen people now, both internally, externally. Some people are, fractional, as I am a small business, but so that's my role.
That's exciting. What do you like most about the brokerage business?
What do I like most? I would say helping business owners to come up with the best solution for them. So going out to market and finding what is going to be best for them and their needs. And then for owners, I really love when we can sell their property quicker for more money and really just put more money into their pockets. That really really drives me to do that.
And what do you like least about the brokerage business?
Emails. That's really easy. I am a phone person, and I just do not like emails, especially when you call another broker to set up a showing and they don't answer their phone, yet you send an email to confirm that you just called them, and then they respond to the email and they want to have a conversation on email. So that's my least favorite thing.
In the brokerage business, it's important to keep everyone updated and on track as you're moving forward in a transaction. What do you do to keep your clients up to date on your assignments?
So, being a paralegal prior to being a broker, I am probably the most type A checklist person that anyone knows. Even my house has its own operations manual, so, and schedules for my children and all those kinds of things. So it's not any different with my business. So every single type of matter, whether it's tenant representation, buyer representation, landlord representation, or seller representation, we have a checklist, and we have built-in time frames, like to check in with people and let them know where we are in the process. And so we usually try to do that via like a phone call, because again, I don't like emails. And then we can always email them a report memorializing those metrics. And we're actually, the next step, we're actually going to start having a more collaborative, like, deal room is something I'm wanting to bring to the forefront with my clients to allow us to collaborate more. Yeah.
I like that. Speaking of collaboration, during all transactions, some problems arise, unforeseen issues pop up. How do you handle those things?
So I have always thought my entire life that there's always going to be challenges, right? So you have to expect the unexpected. To think that it's always going to go smoothly is just silly, in my opinion. And so I guess I always, from the very beginning and outset, I'm not overly ambitious, and I build in buffer and allow there to be some space for challenges that may arise. And then if there are, when there are, because there's always going to be something, right? Our big challenge right now is surveys are taking upwards of 10 weeks. In some cases, we're getting quoted 14 weeks. And so just, I would say, being transparent. I really much like try to collaborate with the other side, whether I'm the buyer or the seller or what role we're in. And I find that that atmosphere of cooperation and being transparent, and that really allows you to find a better solution and talk things out. Don't just automatically come to the other person. Often if you go to the other side and you say, hey, we have this challenge, I'm thinking that we might do this, they might say, well, that's good, but you could also do this. And so not just forcing what you think is the best solution on someone else and talking about it, you can come up with a better solution.
Speaking of issues that come up, this is a contractual situation where you have real estate. How do you protect you and your clients from legal issues?
So, being in the legal field before, and seeing what can happen if you don't properly, document things and protect your things. And that's something I advise them from the very beginning, is to make sure that that's protected. Even with my own company, making sure like I'm trademarked and making sure things are documented is so important. So how I do that is just showing the clients that not all attorneys are bad people, and a lot of them are here to like help you and protect you and get on the front side of things. And so my husband's actually an attorney, so his law firm is designed for business owners and works on like a more preventative model to document everything. So I can't give people legal advice, but I tell them to write everything down and document it, and make sure that they're protected. What we do for tenants is we really try to keep them from doing any kind of personal guarantees or limit that. We also, we're just very careful to make sure we advise them of the things that can come up so that they're aware of it and can protect themselves.
Well, you just brought up your husband. Give him a shameless plug. What's the name of his firm? Where can we get a hold of him?
Yeah, so my husband's Phil Calandrino. He founded a Forward law firm over 10 years. So actually, if you're a client of mine and his, which does happen, you're really going forward and beyond. So he has this forward momentum protocol, actually, which will take people from inception all the way until later on when they build up their business for sale or even internal disposition to like a key employee. He takes them through all of that. So a lot of what I've done, I've kind of borrowed from him somewhat. The holistic, preventative like ideals and philosophies that I share with my clients, I'm able to get from him. So.
Speaking of the brokerage business, now we're going to go back to that. You talk about a team of many people. How do you set up as far as functionality within the brokerage team?
So one of my favorite books is Traction. And within the book Traction, it really talks about having folks in the right roles and how to define those roles and setting up the organizational charts and the 5 different areas of your business. And so when you first start, any business, you're doing like everything. And so as my business has grown, I'm trying to get people more focused on just different areas and have ownership of that. So, you have your finances, you have your human resources, you have your operations, and then of course you have sales and marketing. And, my executive assistant really works mostly with me on the human resources and the operations and the finance side of it. And then I actually have a chief marketing officer, and she helps the team that is more in charge of sales and marketing. And of course, it all kind of comes together. So how do I do that? I think when I first started my brokerage, I think I tried to do everything. And I quickly learned as a brokerage owner and business owner that, as soon as you can afford to hire people, look for people who are smarter than you in different areas and can do things, better than you to free you up. Because, my real gift is like talking to other people and helping to come up with solutions and solving their problems. And I shouldn't be doing invoicing, and I shouldn't be doing paperwork and different things. There's people that are like better at that can support me in doing that. So how I set it up, I read a lot of business books. I've read 25 books this year, despite having a baby a few months ago. So usually reading a couple books a month, but Traction and just other business books and setting it up and, practicing what I preach to other, with a business. Oh, the other thing, if you're a business owner or investor, there's a free program, yes, that's worth thousands and thousands of dollars called 10,000 Small Businesses. It's a grant through Goldman Sachs. You can apply to go through this program. And so I essentially completed a mini MBA earlier this year from February to May. And it went, I created like a 65-page like growth plan, and it went through all those 5 areas that we talked about. And I was able to put together like actionable steps to grow my business, which I did by nearly 50% this year over 2019 and 2020.
That is impressive. That is impressive growth. Speaking of the business, what are your areas of focus?
So, being that I'm a business owner that wants to help other business owners, we primarily focus on professional, like office users, flex users, industrial users, retail users, and like what I'd like to say is we like to take an entrepreneur through their entire like life cycle, from starting up their first location to adding other locations or expanding that location to eventually. What I think each business owner should consider, if it makes sense for them, is to buy their own building. So then they're taking all of their revenues, and instead of giving it to some other family or some other company, they're taking and socking it away in their own property and saving that money. So later on, when they sell their business, not only do they have their business that they get to sell, but they also are capturing all the equity that they built in their property. And so they have like a double double bank account. It's like, it's amazing to do. And I've actually implemented that whole philosophy for myself, where I own my own building. And so, the earnings from Beyond Commercial, then I'm paying into my property so that if I ever sell Beyond Commercial, I have the value in the business, but I also have the value in the building, and I have the right that I could lease it out to whoever buys it. You just give yourself a lot more flexibility and ownership doing that. So those are the folks that I focus on, is pretty much any kind of small business that's growth minded, big picture minded, all different industries. We have dentists, attorneys, manufacturing companies, all types of businesses. And then eventually too, if they buy their own building, it's great for them to also build a portfolio if they can eventually do that. One of the manufacturing clients I worked with recently, he went from a 10,000 square foot space that he was leasing to a 55,000 square foot facility, but he only needed 25,000 square feet. So then we were able to bring in the folks to kind of subdivide the rest of his building, and we were able to lease that out. It pretty much covers his mortgage, and so and then he's able to use his business to pay into that. So we really want to work with people that can kind of see that potential and really want to build that for their families.
That is really good, because you're right. Because a lot of people, small business, are focused just on the business, and that's really good to help them move forward into real estate investing as well. What's your process as you're running your brokerage business, from assignment all the way through transaction through closing?
So yeah, and any deal starts first with after you've qualified, whether someone's a great fit for us and fits, into our methodology, is the next thing that we would do is if it's a user, so like a tenant or a buyer, we have to do a comprehensive needs assessment, and then we go out to market and do a search of properties in a survey. And then we tend to do all of those tours, in a half day, depending on, the size of the properties. Because, if you're touring a 50,000 square foot facility, each site might take an hour. So you go through all that, and then we put together an analysis of each property next to each other, and determine, which one is going to best fit their needs. It's much like a house. When you go out to market as a user, as a buyer or a tenant, you're not going to find the perfect property, but you're having to figure out what is really going to work best to attract your talent, what's going to work best for your business, what's going to generate the most amount of revenue, and what makes most sense for your pocketbook. And so we do that, and then eventually we negotiate a deal, and then carry it forward to the finish line. And a big part of what we do is, even when our broker job is done and we finish the deal, a lot of why my brokerage is called Beyond Commercial is we really stay involved beyond the deal. And so we want to make sure that they move in on time, everything's going smoothly with that, the build out's going well, and just checking in with them on anything we can do to help their business. And so for years to come, we want to just be an asset to them to help them with that. On the owner perspective, do you want to go into that on another question, or you want me to go right into? I'll go right into it. So for owners, the first thing that we do is we put together a broker opinion of value. What's a little bit different about how my brokerage does it is we have it systematized, wherein the agents throughout the week are doing their pitches and meeting with owners and seeing all that, but they have to turn in by the end of the day every Monday their broker opinions of value, which I actually personally review every one of them that come into the firm, and all the other agents. So we kind of all look at it, because we might have differences of opinion and ways to market things, where one agent might say, well, it's a negative that it's on a dead-end street, but another agent might say, well, no, that's a positive because it's very private and you don't have cut-through traffic. And so going through that, we can figure out how to better market the properties and come up with a better price and really achieve a better result. So after we finalize that, We send out by Wednesday. We actually submit to them their draft. They actually can see their draft website of what their listing's going to look like online, with their exclusive and their broker opinion of value. And then if they sign and return that, we can have it listed by the weekend, and getting pictures done and drone photography. And then we go out to market. And we do a lot of old school and new school like ideas where we, I might go out to a site and do a TikTok video. And we may post some of these in different areas on Facebook. We were able to set recently a record for flex space. We got almost $20 a square foot triple net for an owner of a ghost kitchen, because we advertised it in a foodie forum, and there was a local growing restaurant brand that saw it, and they're like, we have to have it, and they realized there was nothing else in the market, and we were able to get that for our client, and he was really grateful for that result. So we just really I guess the difference in it is throughout the process, we're collaborating as a team and coming up with really cool ideas of how we can better get our listings syndicated, because essentially a listing is you're marketing a property. So you want to build the biggest sales funnel possible. The more eyes that look at a property, the more opportunities you have to ultimately get top dollar for your client, and the more options you have.
You're experiencing incredible growth. You've been driving the company up. Obviously, bringing on new commercial agents. So, what advice do you have for someone who's new to commercial real estate?
So I would say, qualifying your prospects. So I think a lot of brand new agents have shiny new toy syndrome, is what I'd call it. It's like, let me try this, and let me try this, and let me try this. I think you should have a focus, because it's very, every commercial deal is very tedious, and there's a lot of work involved with it. And if you're all over the place doing lots of different things, and you're not as effective, and I find that you would not get as much traction. I would also say there's no shortcuts. I think taking the time to really invest in your professional development by educating yourself and doing a lot of research, and just really getting really good at your craft is going to build you a really great career for years to come. I like to use I run my company kind of like a professional sports team, and we're more of we're practicing. That's why we do the broker opinions of value. The more we all do it together, the better that we get at it. And so I would give that same advice to a new agent, is really take as much opportunity to practice and hone your craft and learn about it. Also be willing to review your tape, review the plays again and see what you could do better. And be willing to accept feedback. When I first got into the commercial real estate field, I got a mentor. And so I was able to get that advice. And so, yeah, I would say invest in yourself, and don't take any kind of shortcuts, and then just make sure that you're working with people, have a more defined area of focus so that you can be more effective.
I'm sure you see a lot of things. You got a lot of deals move in, and we all make mistakes or have errors or have problems that come up. What are some problems that recently arose, and what did you learn from them?
I would say my overarching problem is my own self-limiting beliefs, and sometimes I can be a very type A perfectionist, and that can kind of stand in the way of my business, because I will sometimes think of a new initiative or thing that we should go after, but then I'm afraid of it failing. So then I'll just say, okay, well, let me just stick to what I'm kind of comfortable with, and let me just stay the course with that. And so I think that looking back over the last few years, I would say that's my biggest, I don't have one mistake. And And now I don't even really view them as mistakes because I've learned that growth is messy. Your growth is super messy. And there are going to be mistakes. And so the biggest thing I've been learning is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So when you're uncomfortable, you're changing and you're growing, and you're always going to have mistakes in business, and there's always going to be challenges. I think the biggest thing where I've grown is like just learning that it's okay, like to make these mistakes and have bad hires, and then you learn better like who is like ideal for your business, I would say that's, and also I would say the biggest change in my business too is learning that you can't put any individual interest above the team. So just like in like a sports team, you got to do what's like in the best interest of the sports team to eventually get to the Super Bowl or the World Series or whatever you're competing for. So like at Beyond Commercial, like we're a team. But if any one player on the team starts to put his or her interest above the team, that can really affect your culture in a negative manner. And so I think a mistake I had as a leader was just trying too hard to please like individuals, and that like hindered my business's like growth as well. So now I've like learned, and I tell the team this, I can't ever put any one person, including my own interest, above the team. And that's helped us like considerably. And then, realizing too, if people don't want to stay because of that, that's okay. And like, I'm more comfortable with the comings and the goings. And, at the end of the day, I know I'm doing what's best for the organization so we can grow.
The vast majority of the audience at 100 units is multifamily investors. Would you give them some quick rundowns as the difference between multifamily properties and commercial real estate?
So I would say from my understanding with multifamily, it can be a much better sometimes investment than necessarily industrial and office. People tend to be more attracted to that because in an office building, you might have a 40,000 square foot office building and maybe there's 10 suites in it. So if you lose 1 out of 10 suites, you have like 10% that you're down, versus if you have like a 200 unit, property, you can really mitigate, some of that risk. I would say like with differences between commercial and multifamily as well. So if you're talking about industrial, retail, office, there's benefits there too with, their longer leases, there's greater like escalations. And so there's just differences in the investment and who you're targeting, and who's ultimately at the other side paying the rental income in. Another difference, I guess, is depending on the type of commercial investment, like an office lease wouldn't be a triple net situation. So in multifamily, you lease out and you might be collecting $2,000 a month on a unit. And then that particular person renting that, they cover all of their expenses. But let's say you are owning an office building. Most office leases, at least in the Orlando market, are full service gross leases. So let's say you're collecting $5,000 a month on like an office space, but you will actually have expenses like coming out of that because you've included everything. Like in a Class A office space situation, you as the owner are like paying the janitorial, and you're paying the electric, you're paying everything, so that attorney in that space is just cutting one check and then the owner covers it. So there's like differences in how the investment's like structured, how all of that works. So
do you do quite a bit of investment work where the clients are looking to purchase strictly investment property as opposed to owner users?
I do. As I've grown as a business, so the natural trajectory for someone in my type of brokerage, where you're doing more commercial, like office, industrial, retail, is you start with tenant representation, and then often like you grow to where you're doing listing assignments and those types of things. Of course, I've decided to kind of more so just set up this like cycle where, you know, I do want to get people to that point where they're investing. So yeah, I have a couple families where they own a number of like either industrial or office assets. And so I help them to kind of optimize that portfolio and figure out, get ahead of their vacancies, because that's the number one thing in my type of commercial. The other point I didn't point out is the vacancies tend to be a heck of a lot longer in commercial than it would necessarily be in multifamily, because you have to think about it. If you have an office building and you have a 5,000 square foot space for lease, how many users are actually going to need that space in that particular spot? And is the current configuration of that space even going to work for that particular person? So the number one thing that I'm doing for owners who have portfolios is really getting ahead of those vacancies and being proactive and coming up with solutions to really minimize that, because that will really affect their checkbook.
That is one of the big differences I've noticed between investors when they are moving between the asset types, is they don't understand the difference in commercial, where they're expected to do build out, expected to do tenant representation, they need a leasing time period. When you're coaching someone who's a new investor in that space, what kind of tips do you give them to say, hey, this is what you should set aside for build out, this is what you set up for time of vacancy and leasing commissions? And
so typically I'm telling I'm advising the owner just depending on the different markets that they're in. So it just varies. Like right now, industrial's really, really hot. And so most, it's expected right now, there's very little that the owner has to do, because this is going like hotcakes. There's a number of things driving that. Florida is expanding their port. We're bringing a lot more of the supply chain here. So there's just a lot more. And then of course the change of, industrial is the new retail. So there's a lot of demand there. So I would coach an investor in industrial that, well, first of all, you just, the cap rates are super compressed. And so if they're going to buy industrial, it's going to be a long-term play. But in the meantime, the expectation is you wouldn't necessarily be shelling out quite as much money, because the expectation right now is that the rents are up considerably, and most of the users are having to pay for their own build out, and just grateful that they found a space, because there's not much space available. However, like with office users, I have a listing not too far away, and there are 10 other listings exactly like it. It's a 15,000 square foot space, and everybody who wants to come in there, and the construction costs are so high right now. And so especially if you have really small spaces to lease and there needs to be any kind of configuration done, I mean, you can be talking about $100,000 build, and the tenants aren't going to want to pay for that. And they're going to say, well, shoot, I can use that money to go buy a building, and the interest rates are super cheap. And so if you're going to do, office, have that in mind, that we have a lot longer vacancy time frames, higher tenant expectations, but the cap rates are higher than industrial and other asset classes.
Speaking of investment and leverage and mortgage rate, what are mortgage rates and terms that most buyers are looking at right now?
So if you're going to a community bank, which most small businesses would be going to a community bank, and they can probably get something in the 3s or low 4s. If they already own their property and they're looking to finance, there's been institutions I've been talking about in the high 2s, like a 2.75% refi. That's from a larger institution, and I wouldn't recommend to try to close with a large institution on a because it just takes forever. And most, if you're trying to buy something, the sellers are wanting to close like in 60 days. They're not going to wait 90 to 120 days for a big, institution to fund it. Plus, it's really hard to get that for a small business. So that's what I'm seeing. But anywhere from the high 2s to the low 4s, just depending on the amortization schedule and the term and the credit worthiness. Like myself personally, I have a 15-year term, 15-year amortization, and I got the mortgage back in 2019, and I was more like 4.25 or 4.5, and I'm like, man, I need to refinance. However, I mean, making additional payments, and so I'd actually have it paid off in 9.3 years, but who's counting, right? So but yeah, so I would, that's one of the, to bring it back to full circle where we first started, that is one of the ways you can combat inflation, is take a look at your portfolio of investments, or take a look at, if you are a tenant, does it make sense to buy, and looking at, can you refinance, take some of that capital, out and use it for other purposes, and how to deploy that like in a meaningful manner. And if you are a business owner and you're in a property, does it make sense to buy because the interest rates are so cheap? However, the Fed is pointing to some increases coming up, and of course there's, trickle down effect to that. So, here we are, end of 2021, heading into 2022. It's time to really look at that and pay attention to that. I wouldn't wait too long to do that.
All right, we were talking about books earlier on, where you were talking about reading quite a few books. I was really impressed. What book recommendations you got?
Book recommendations. And so I would say, what am I reading right now? I have The Power of Habit. Was really, really good. I've been reading all about that. Like, the main premise of that is, if you're wanting to change a habit that you don't care for so much, you really have to substitute almost like another habit, in its place, and how to do that. I also had a team member not too long ago tell me, well, their love language is words of affirmation. And I'm like, well, I can't use love languages in my business. I actually learned there's a book called the 5 Languages of Affirmations for the office. And so, which was really interesting. I've been reading that, and then how to, depending on the personality type of your teammate, how to better communicate with them utilizing their words of affirmation style, aka love language. So those are the 2 things I'm reading right now. But I've read Netflix's book. Netflix had a book all about their culture this year. And that was really interesting to read, how much they empower their team to make decisions. And it's not really a top-down approach. And that really more embodies my style of more collaborative leadership, and really helping to grow those. So I would recommend the Netflix culture book. And if you want to get any of my other recommendations, just let me know. I keep track of all of them in an app.
Speaking of letting you know, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So I'm all over social media. So either, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the above. It's Amy Calandrino, Calandrino. You can always text or call me, 407-492-0433, and I would give you my email, but I really hate email. So, no, if you really want to send me an email, it's Amy at Beyond Commercial, but calling, texting, or reaching out to me on social media is usually a good way to get me. So.
Awesome, Amy. Thanks for sharing with 100 Units all the tips for commercial real estate.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much.